When Public Health Administrator Angie Shrimpton was seconded to an aged care home in the grip of Melbourne's second wave, she says she was thrown straight in the deep end.
There was, PPE to put on and people taking their infected PPE off in the same tiny room. I had infected residents coming up to my desk.
Within just 3 days, Angie had caught the virus.
On Wednesday, I developed an extremely mild cough. I went and got tested the following morning, and of course the test was positive. I had COVID. Then on the Sunday, both of my kids tested positive.
Workers like Angie have made around 3,000 COVID-related compensation claims since the start of the pandemic. But while workers' compensation operates on a no-fault principle, employees can sue their boss if they believe their employer's deliberate or negligent actions have caused them to contract COVID.
I've put on weight, I'm still coughing, I don't feel like the same person and I don't look like the same person that I did before I got sick.
By law, employers are obliged to eliminate risks to health and safety so far as reasonably practicable, which is where it gets tricky for small business.
There's a real concern that small businesses will do their best to make sure that their customers themselves and their workers are safe, but that won't be enough and they still might find themselves either with higher premiums or in court.
So as restrictions ease, workplaces fill up and the virus continues to circulate, the Council of Small Businesses Australia is asking for a map to help navigate the coming legal minefield.
By removing those public health orders, small businesses now need to navigate a whole bunch of other rules and regulations. What the governments can support us with is certainty. Give us some really clear guidelines as to what we need to do to make sure that we don't find ourselves either with higher workers' comp premiums or find ourselves in court.
As an employment lawyer, Faye Calderoni is in the thick of it and she joins us now. Faye, how big a problem could this become?
Look, we're looking at about 2,000 cases of COVID-related claims in New South Wales at the moment with an estimated $15 million liability. But as we open up, obviously, and everybody's getting mobile, they're estimating it could be over $600 million in New South Wales alone.
This seems to centre on employers' obligation to eliminate risk to health and safety so far as practicable. In COVID normal times, is that too vague?
It is a bit vague. Employers are really scratching around. Of course, in states where there's public health orders, it's a little bit more black and white. But in New South Wales, it's really up to the employers to determine, whether it is a lawful and reasonable direction to require vaccination in their workplace and whether there are other control measures that they feel comfortable with implementing short of vaccination. Adequate social distancing, mask wearing, check-ins, people are not coming in when they're sick, people are isolating when they're required to, all of those things.
If, though, they wanted to, at a business level, impose a vaccine mandate for their own workers, could they point to this law and say, we have to do this in order to avoid being sued in negligence, and use that as the legal basis on which they can mandate that?
So from that perspective, an employer can rightly say, well, you're in a customer-facing role, we're opening up, we can't make our customers or people that are coming in and out of our hotels or our supermarkets get vaccinated, so therefore it is a lawful and reasonable direction that we require vaccination.
But I suppose where it gets interesting is, could an employee in a workplace that hasn't mandated turn around and sue their employer and say, sorry, you should have had a mandate. That's what was reasonably required of you in the circumstance.
I think not mandating vaccinations is probably not enough. I think if an employer, for example, said, look, I know you've been a close contact on the weekend, but I'm really stretched and I've got, I'm understaffed and I really need you to come in anyway, and then there's an outbreak, sure. But I don't know that we're there yet to say, just because a workplace hasn't mandated vaccinations, if there's no public health order, that it's enough to be a work health and safety prosecution or some other breach case.
Are you mostly dealing with people who've caught COVID, or are you seeing other complaints as well?
You know what? Not so much people that have caught COVID. I think they're a bit more black and white. The ones we're getting across our desk are people that are vaccine hesitant, and a lot of directions, questions about whether or not directions from employers are lawful and reasonable. And then the second layer, we know that the dark side of this pandemic is the mental health consequences of it. And we are seeing so many of those site claims and the manifestations of the mental health and the stress that employees have been under during the pandemic are now culminating in this stress in terms of returning to work because they don't want to get vaccinated, or they don't want to work with someone else that's not vaccinated, or they're scared about contracting COVID in the course of their employment. So there is a huge amount of health anxiety out there, which is playing out in different workplaces in different ways.
Uncharted territory, isn't it, Faye? Thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thank you for having me.